Cabbage Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
WAK.
If Amtgard knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on
right.
a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Amtgard community at large and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. This week, we have our third saint on. This is Saint Godric. Is it Gracie?
Gray, just like the
Gray.
color.
Okay, Gray. Man, I really messed that
Yeah,
up.
you put a C where there wasn't one. Hey, real quick, you said this before we started, and I was trying to figure out. We've had Saint O'Banion, Saint Godric. Who's the third? Who am I missing?
Oh, the other saint?
Yeah.
I don't.
Wasn't it Lyndon?
Yeah, Lyndon's saint.
Yeah.
Is she a saint?
Yeah.
Oh my. Well, of course. I mean, she is a saint, but like, I didn't know in title. Okay, that makes sense.
Count of the Black Marsh, Rising Winds. So, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
So, you've watched the show several times. I know. We always start with the same question. Tell us how you got into foam fighting. And if Amtgard wasn't your first, tell us where you started and then how you got into Amtgard.
Tell us who's to blame.
Yeah, for sure. So it started not Amtgard, but more of like we watched some DAG videos and Amtgard videos on YouTube and just kind of threw together these awful weapons on our own. But I was just finished up my freshman year at college and went back home to Indiana, where I'm from. I was going to school in Knoxville, actually. Funny how all that works out. Went back home, and some of my high school buddies were at the card shop, and they were making weapons from this new game that they had found and established a park while I was gone. And so I kind of showed up, and at first I thought that I wasn't a huge fan of the class stuff. I thought it was like super nerdy, as if like just walking around in costumes and hitting people isn't nerdy enough. But I wasn't a huge fan of the class stuff, but I loved the costuming and the fighting was always super fun. And so then from there, jumped in, really enjoyed it, went back to Knoxville and kind of got some of my buddies to play at campus. I went to Johnson University, which is about 30 minutes south of Knoxville. And so we got 6 or 8 of us to play. And then I came to fought with Jeb and Gunn a couple of times. And then we went up to the Oak Ridge Park once as well, but it was kind of a trek. So but we were as noob gets, right? Like no garb, showing up with awful pantyhose weapons, just terrible, you know. And so we played a little bit at campus, came down a few times to play out there, and then I moved back to Indiana in 2015. Kind of got involved more locally with my park, Black Marsh, and some of the Kingdom stuff, and haven't really looked back.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. So Knoxville based, or you're getting into Knoxville is really cool. Did you say you went to college in Knoxville, or you were taking a break?
Yep. No, I went to college in Knoxville.
Okay. Yep. Trying to make sure I had that straight. Speaking of no garb, by the way.
Yeah, it's not me. It's not me this week.
I skewered you 2 times in a row, and then I forget my garb. So I deserve this. So let's take a look here. I've got your Amped Wiki pulled up. And, obviously, Serpent Knight. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see your plaques on the back wall there. What started you on that path? What made you realize that was something you wanted to do? And at what point did you notice that was something that was obtainable for you?
Yeah, so there were really 2 different people, but like projects, I guess, where I was out at my home park just kind of fighting. And I saw my first plastite shield. Someone was raiding our park. And everything else I had seen at that point, like I said, was pantyhose weapons and like people cutting up T-shirts for shield covers and just, awful normal Amtgard crafts. And when I saw a full plastite shield, I kind of fell in love and went home and cut up some blue foam, did a awful plastite shield that lasted about a month. And then that kind of jump started that part. And then probably towards the end of that summer, I saw someone come out with a paracord belt, and I had never seen a paracord anything in Amtgard. And I was like, that looks real cool. And that's kind of just how I was like, I'm going to learn that. I'm going to figure out what that is. And then as far as when it became obtainable, a couple of years later, like I said, I started in 2011. When I got back in 2015 to Indiana, to the Rising Winds, started entering tournaments after that, pretty soon after I got back. And once I won one, it was like, okay, can actually do this. It's not as intimidating as what, looking from the outside in. Kingdom tournaments can be these big, awful, intimidating things. And after the first one, I won the first one. I'm like, all right, this isn't too bad.
Yeah, so quick thing here. Your tutorial videos online are how I learned to make your belt. And the belt that I'm doing for Teflon right now.
Oh, that's a really good belt. I knew it couldn't have been you.
Yeah, right. No, Lexi, I was looking for a simple weave, and Lexi pointed me towards your single strand serpent weave belt.
Cool.
And I use that. We actually have a half finished project in a basket behind here that you can't see.
Yeah. Along with like several reels of macrame cord or paracord, I guess.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Buy them in the big rounds. You save yourself some money, man. That's actually one of my favorite things that I've seen in Amtgard are people reaching out and saying, "Hey, I made this," and they'll send me a picture of something that they've made, and I used your video.
Oh,
that's
really
like the coolest thing. Or like when I'm at Keep, people will come up. I don't know any of these people, and they're like, "Hey, look at my belt! I made it watching," and they'll say one of my videos, and I love that, man. That's been one of the coolest parts about putting all the videos up is helping people from. I think I have sold belts to like 14 or 15 kingdoms at this point, and I've had more than that from people who have made their own belts send me pictures from their stuff, which is just so cool. I love that.
I like that you sell them, and also you're like, hey, I'll show you how to make this. If you want one, I'll make one for you. And you very often we'll actually do some hype for you in the
show notes.
Yeah, the show notes at the very bottom of this.
Sorry, I was making the note as I couldn't talk and type.
But yeah, we'll toss some hype your way. But I know that you will very often post up some pictures of the commissions that you're working on, or something you really like.
The Amtgard Weavers Guild page on Facebook, is that? Okay.
So we have a group that we made, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's got over 200 people in it now that are mainly Amtgard. We got a few DAG people in there too. But it's people can ask questions on there. We have a bunch of people who make video tutorials, which is really cool now too. And it's kind of just a, hey, what are you working on? Help me out with this community. That's been really fun to be a part of.
Okay.
That's really cool. So we talked a little bit before you came on. You have a different outlook than some of the other Serpent belts that we have had on. We've a lot of the people that we've talked to have very much been hey, don't worry about tournaments and your scores don't matter. I mean, that's a very iconic part of our intro now. But you actually really enjoy participating in tournaments. You really enjoy the competitiveness of them and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when Lyndon talked about that quite a bit, and I agree that her stance, the scores don't matter, is a valid option, but I don't think it's the only option. I think it depends on what your goal is, right? If your goal is to increase your craft to get yourself to masterhood, that is a different path than I want to come in and dominate and win the tournaments. Right. It's two different mindsets. And so I'm a hyper competitive person in like our company battle games. Love them. I love Phoenix League. Jugging is I love competitive aspects of our game.
Right.
And I'm not the best fighter in the world, but I participate in every fighting tournament I can. Like it's enjoyable and it's fun. And same thing with the ANS. And so kind of the way I look at it, and I've gotten flack of this through the years, but if you're in a fighting tournament and there is something you can do that is available to everybody else, right? It's not a cheating thing. It's not, if your tech can be slightly better and it's a quarter of an ounce lighter, if you're going to wear a specific type of shoe that's going to give you a micro advantage, you're going to take every advantage that you can to help you win that tournament. And Absolutely. I kind of take that same approach when it comes to the arts and sciences. I'm gonna play the rules, like depending on the rule set that is, presented to me. If there are a chance for bonus points, I'm taking them. If I know, pet peeve of mine, when people ask for judges on like a public forum and they post all of the judges, the judges comment, hey, I'll do it. Hey, I'll do it. That's letting me as an entrant know who my judges are. And so theoretically, if I know who I am completely good with our judges not being anonymous, and I'm sure we'll probably get into that. But
Same, kind of.
yeah. And so, but if I know beforehand who my judges are, and 3 of them happen to be in the same fighting company, I'm going to make some items for this tournament that are going to be in those company colors. Banking on 1 or 2 of them might lean into that bias that they don't know that they have. And you know what I mean? Like I'm taking every little advantage that I can get to win these things.
Yeah,
and
I mean, if you're in it to win it, these A&S competitions can be expensive. So why not take every edge out that you can? I mean, it makes sense.
So, like on a tangential thing, when I saw vendors at some of the Belgarth things near Nashville, they actually would make their laser mugs, like they laser etch mugs or something like that, with the companies and things they knew are going to be there, because it's more likely to sell for them than necessarily a generic item. Like, I don't know why
knowing your audience is
I don't
a
know why
skill.
it never really occurred to me from even just a vendor to also the tournament aspect to go that route, because if I'm going to be competitive about something, I'm like you, and I'm going to game the system in any way possible.
Yeah, and so like when I vend at DAG, and Amtgard, and so I know where I'm going and what kingdom I'm in. I'll do my research on the largest companies that are there. I'll make 2 or 3 belts for each of those. I'll make sure I come in with Squire's belts, and I have 2 belts, Knight's belts for each path, and then I'll have some like if I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna vend, which I do quite often because it pays for my tournaments.
Right.
I do my research on that, and I know who's going to be there and what I'm most likely going to be able to sell. And then it's the same thing with the tournaments. If I know my judges, like if I can get that advantage, everyone else, you guys are entering against me, can get the same advantage too. If you try hard enough, I'm going to take it. I'm good with it.
Yeah, you're not doing something nobody else can do. You're just
Right.
doing something people don't do. One quick question, because I know Flo has a thing, but this is eating away at me, and I just thought you vended at both DAG and Amtgard tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Who pays more?
DAG by far.
Oh,
Hands down.
that would have been my guess.
Dude, the culture around DAG and Belgarth, as far as how vendors work and everything, is so different than what we view it. And it's really quite interesting, too. We could literally do an entire episode over the random culture differences like that. And it's really cool.
So just for
Put that in the
instance,
bank, yeah.
Middlemarch is the Indianapolis Dagorhir Park. They put on an event every April, every non-COVID April,
Right.
Called Olympics, and it's my favorite foam fighting event that I've ever been to. And they have a massive, they have a massive vendors row, and there'll be 15 or 20 vendors showing up. But this tournament, essentially, they do the 4 horsemen tournaments. There's individual tournaments like an Amtgard with single blues, and your reds and your sword and board and flow and all of that. But when you show up at DAG, at O's, when you sign in at gate, you have to be in garb or show you have garb. Like, they don't let you onto their event field without garb on.
This dovetails into a conversation I was having with somebody the other day, where Dagorhir events people are much more it seems like in character. And maybe that's just because they're all wearing garb because they have to be.
Well, they even take that step further. Like, whenever I went to one of the, Equinoxes, so there were several people giving me a hassle about my modern boonie kind of hat instead of like a more medieval hat and things like that too.
Have you considered that you just look like an idiot?
I mean, yes.
Okay.
The cool thing about DAG, though, is like it leans very heavily into the fantasy stuff. So while they want you to be in garb, you can walk out in full Viking garb if you want to, and that's completely acceptable. But you can also walk.
I'm good.
You're
in a
out
soccer
jersey, dude.
No, I don't mean right now.
Okay.
But you could also walk out. I've seen like full dwarven plate and guys with the big old beards and trying to role play the dwarven stuff. So it's pretty open. But to play their game, you have to have garb at events. Now at the local level, it's not as bad. Like I play DAG quite a bit locally too, and it's not that strict.
I think
but when they're at the events,
but yeah. They're a little more strict they're definitely way more strict than Amtgard, right? But like the local ones I've been to, if you're not within about a month or whatever with garb, you're starting to get razzed about it and everything too. So
yeah. Well, they have a rule very similar to the SCA, which is like a reasonable attempt from 10 feet away, right? So like you can walk out in pretty basic garb at DAG and be fine. It's just they don't want your cleats. They don't want your mechs. They really, really don't like lacrosse gloves, but you can just say it's a safety thing and they'll let you.
Right.
But like they don't want any jeans. They don't want any neon. They don't like, and the reason I think
neon.
for this is, no neon. Yeah, and the reason for this is anytime you get on a big field, they want to take pictures, and they want those pictures to be able to be on the internet and on Facebook, and it's an advertising thing. And so I love that, but that goes back to the original question. In DAG, it is expected that you spend it is expected that you acquire, either make or spend money on at least one, if not more, good kits of armor. And so, or not armor, sorry, garb. And you need to look good when you're out there. Mm-hmm. And so Amtgard, one of its advantages is that it is the cheapest of the boffer sports to get into.
Right.
That is also one of the disadvantages is we are the cheapest boffer sport to get into. And so when I tell someone at Amtgard, hey, I want you to go buy one of these Smiley Foamwork swords for $60. It's going to last you for, a year or two, and you can, beat it up and it's going to be great. Amtgarders sometimes back away from that. They're not, when we tell them, hey, we can get you started for $10, and then you say, hey, spend more money, it's kind of hard. But at DAG, if they, you walk out on a DAG field and the average kit's $300, like it's the same thing with SCA, right? You go into it with a certain mindset and people are willing to spend more for it.
That's fair.
Yeah, like I've noticed talking to a few cross gamers like Telfair or Gary Ice, and people like that, a lot of times they're more likely to buy like Gorg stuff or something along those lines than they are to make it themselves, which is not to say that like a crafting thing doesn't exist in Belgarth and DAG, but it is, I don't know, less like looked down upon to buy stuff or something. I'm not really sure, because like it's not really looked down upon in Amtgard necessarily, but how much you pay, the expectation is much higher in DAG and Bell than it is in Amtgard.
Much more reasonable, I'll say.
Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah. and there's something to be said too. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I was just going to say
there's something to be said too.
We have a delay. Godric,
go.
No, it's you. It's you. It's all you. It's all you.
Okay.
We're not going to go.
Cool. Something to be said too. In the upper intensity of DAG and Bell, their weapons, especially their poles, hit significantly harder than ours. And so personally, I'm willing to go pay Gorg $200 to make me a pole to make sure I'm not going to hurt somebody, compared to my fun noodle foam, like the super noodle foam in Amtgard. Like It's just their game hits, especially with the poles. I think with the singles, it's not too. I fight pretty much the same at both with my single and my board. It's pretty much the same. But with the poles in particular, I'm all right paying somebody to make sure that I've got a safe one.
I actually, so since Jay's going to be a part of every single one of our episodes, apparently now, he messaged me while we were out playing disc golf earlier today. Let me know that he and I ordered a Gorg shield. And so they're in
one
now.
for the two of you to share.
Yeah, that's right. We both have to have a hand on it for it to count. But we did the same thing. We looked over, and Jay has made, I don't know how many shields. The one that was in the background last week was,
I think the count was close to 15 to 20, like not even kidding.
Mm-hmm. And he ultimately said, you know what? This guy knows what he's doing. It's more than I would pay if I made it myself, but I want something that can work in both games, that I know is going to be safe in both games, that's well constructed, and is going to stand up to being left in my car and stuff tossed on top of it and everything else.
Well, I think this is also a side effect of Amtgard growing up. Like, we are willing to spend more now. Like, I've seen Amtgarders say, like, oh, I spent, $300 on this tunic. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Like, you never would have heard that 10 years ago. But we're growing up, we're getting better jobs, that kind of thing. So people are becoming more willing to. But anyway, this is an Amtgard podcast, not a DAG podcast. So let me veer us back onto course, because
this is a foam fighting. It says in our intro.
It is. But I veered us into DAG territory real hard. Yep. I didn't mean to. So
I apologize. Cross gaming's a big thing for me. I love cross gaming. I think everybody in our game should cross game, because it makes everybody better.
I don't disagree with that, honestly. That is a good idea.
So I have another DAG question for you.
God
I don't know a whole lot about it.
Killing me.
Does DAG have what would be? I know that their knighthood works very differently than our knighthood does. Do they have the equivalency to like an SCA Laurel or Amtgard Serpent Knight in DAG?
So, yes, but it's not very prevalent. So the way that their stuff works, there are specific orders of knighthood, and generally those are geographically located. Like in Indianapolis, they have the Silver Order, and that is their, and they each order can have their own individual requirements to obtain knighthood.
I like
and
that.
So, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And so certain orders throughout the country have ANS requirements. Most of them will have, you need to be able to craft weapons and shields. That's a requirement to be a knight, for instance. And then some of them go really hard in it. There's one in particular that's based on like the Druidic stuff. So like you have to learn so many words in ancient Druidic, and you have to know so many of your local, plants and fauna, and like each one can do their own thing. And so, yeah, there are ANS equivalent knights, but they're not everywhere, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right, let's bring it back to Amtgard. Yeah,
Do it.
I had to go off on that tangent, but it was actually a pretty cool one, to be honest with you. I think you or Teflon pitched the idea of like the cultural differences and scoping those out. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to your first big ANS tournament win, right? You mentioned that was where you got hooked on it. You got kind of grabbed by it. Do you remember what you turned in that gave you that big win?
For sure. So it was funny. I actually didn't get to go to our tournament. It was a Weapon Master, Dragon Master, and I sent entries with a friend because all the stuff was up, I want to say like 2 hours away, hour and a half away, and I couldn't make it. And so I sent in a bunch of paracord belts. I sent in, I want to say, some awards at the time too, like some like hand-drawn awards. And that one in particular, I did not get best in show, but I won overall.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where I'm sitting there at work and my buddy texts me and goes, "Hey, you won." I'm like, no, I didn't. Like I did not expect, I didn't expect it. It was the first tournament. I just kind of sent some stuff up there, and it was a decent turnout. Some ANS tournaments can have 10 items and some can have 100, right? And so we kind of like in the Warlord stuff, sufficient competition matters. So not every ANS win is the same thing. But that one I was comfortable with that win looking back on it. Like there was enough people there to where I felt I didn't steal it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does Rising Winds look at awarding higher level awards based on the tournaments, or do you guys have a culture where you don't really have to compete, but if you're making quality things, they're still being seen?
It's really both. So for instance, it's all about visibility, and tournaments are the easiest way to be visible, but they're not the only way to be visible. So I got my Master Dragon mainly through tournaments. One of my best buddies is a Master Owl. His name's Lao Tzu. He does woodworking, amazing, awesome stuff. He never entered a single Kingdom tournament his whole time.
That's good to hear.
And
that's awesome.
We got our masterhood within a year and a half of each other. So both are prevalent. It's just your stuff has to be visible. And if you're not going to enter tournaments, you got to be kind of creative about what you do. This guy, Lao Tzu, was creative because he made like thrones that the king sat on. He made knighting's chests that everybody saw, stuff like that.
Oh, that's
so
really
like,
cool.
That's what I want to do.
I want
Seriously, that's what I want to do.
You guys should go check his stuff out. It's Lao Tzu the Builder on the Orc, and Sam Maffett on Facebook. Dude is awesome. He makes such good stuff.
It's in the show notes.
So, kind of tangential to the last question in a way. Have you gotten any awards from anything that you have vended, or do you know anyone who has gotten an award from a vended item?
Yeah, this is a hot button topic.
I think so.
Kind of. People think like if you're making money off of it, you can't also get awarded for it, and that's
and I think it's
and
crap,
they're wrong.
But yeah,
well, now you're going to influence his answer, but
I think
done,
that's wrong too.
We're done poisoning the well
I
now.
think that's
you
wrong
can
too.
no, he already said he vended, so I figured he'd go along with it. You know?
So personally, my vending kind of went the other way, in that I made stuff for tournaments and then I turned around and sold it. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. So I didn't vend I didn't make stuff to vend that then got awards. It was kind of the other way around. But I know of a lot. a couple of different Serpent Knights up here who have made stock items to sell that end up getting, got awards for it.
That's awesome.
Especially if you go back 5 or 10 years.
So one of the questions that has come up over and over again for us is the interaction with the judges. I want to start by saying that I am not saying anything negative about the people that are volunteering to do this. It's a lot of hard work, but we have heard over and over again from people that they turn in items and the items score well or the items don't score well, but they're not really given any kind of feedback as to why they scored well or didn't score well. Your outlook on this, which is more of the, I want to be competitive with it, and I want to be the best that I can be, and I want to go up against the best that I can be. When you were coming up through the ranks, did you have this problem, and what advice would you give to other people that are trying to make that climb now?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know how your guys' tournaments are set up, but our judging has 4 categories, and they kind of have different percentages on what they're worth. So for instance, presentation and documentation is only ever like 10% of your total score. Then craftsmanship is generally 40%, and then your scope, which is like how difficult was it, and then you have creativity. Have I ever seen anything like this before? And so the judges give we do 1 through 10. I know you guys were talking about, you guys do the 5-point scale. We do 1 through 10, and I get scores for each of those, right? And so if I see something like, for instance, my craftsmanship on some of my early belts was like 9, but it was a page belt. So it got like a 3 on the scope and a 3 on the creativity because it was a single color page belt, right? And so by breaking your scores down into those individual categories, even if you get, I don't want to call them terrible judges, even if you get a judge that has 200 items to judge and they can't leave you good content,
Sure.
You can at least look at the breakdowns of the scores and be able to see what you need to put more effort into next time.
Have you ever run into an issue where somebody gave you have you ever run into an issue where somebody gave you like a 5 for construction and you couldn't find out why? Like they just threw down a 5 and walked away.
Yes, but most of the time between the other judges, I would get something I could use, right? We do 5 judges, drop the highest, drop the lowest. And so most of our recent tournaments have all been, the comments have been done on the computer. Like our judges either judge from home with the digital stuff, or they bring their laptops and type in their stuff because it's a lot easier than like writing on the cards and you can get more into it. So even if one judge doesn't give good info, generally one of the 5 will.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, advice for people that are kind of like coming up against what do I do next, take the feedback that you get and take it to heart. Because oftentimes you'll get judges that are going to judge, 2 of the 4 tournaments a year. So you're going to get reoccurring judges. And so when you do that, you can take a look at the things that the judges are particularly looking for. If you get a comment that says, hey, your seams weren't finished, do this next time. Do it, right? Even if you disagree with it, even if you think it's wrong, and then in your next write-up, put, I did this the first time. Judge A said this, so I'm doing this. Right?
Yeah.
And if you put that in your write-up, the next judges can't say, like, if they say you're wrong, they're saying that one of the other judges is wrong, and then that most of them don't want to do that.
Right.
Right?
So I know that people know you best perhaps for the belt work that you've done. What are some other areas of ANS that you're into?
Yeah. I kind of bounce all over the place. My end goal is all 3 ANS masterhoods. I want all 3 of them. So belts are the main one. Plastite dip is what got me into it. I've made, I don't know, half a dozen of those. Pretty fun. I've done a little bit of like lamellar armor and a little bit of leatherworking, not much. Digital awards is another big one that I love doing. I love making the awards. And then I'm just now getting into Garber too. So I've learning to sew, which has been an adventure.
I was going to ask if you made the hood you're wearing, because it looks really good.
No, this one is Sir Declan. He's the only person I know that has all 3 A&S master hoods.
Oh, nice.
So he's
really
kind of the one I look up to for all this stuff. Yeah.
I think that I recognize the name. He's the captain of Ferrum Crux, right? Or one of the captains?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, he's one of our founders. Our captains kind of rotate on a yearly basis, but he's one of our founders. Yep. He's a 3-belted knight out of Griffin's Perch in Indianapolis.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I met the guy at an event once because he would mold clay mugs, because at DAG you can't walk around with a beer can or anything, right? But you can walk around with a clay mug that looks suspiciously like a can.
That's strangely the same size as a Pabst Blue Ribbon can. Huh?
And he said, I was talking to him, I was like, man, that must be really profitable for you. He's like, yeah, people will get drunk and drop them, and then they have to come back and buy another clay mug.
Yep. He, believe it or not, he actually has a master's in pottery. Like that's
that's
where
really cool.
where that comes from.
I'm not trying to be a jerk. I didn't know that was something you could master in.
Yeah, I assume you can master in everything.
That's just really cool. I mean, I've seen people do really
when
cool
I say
stuff with
masterhood, I'm talking like the academic degree.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't know you could master it. That's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. There's a lot of history behind it and stuff. So picking company captains and stuff, do the triads just play nose goes?
Oh, no. We have... Oh, you're talking about when we have to pick a new captain?
Yeah, do you just not it?
It's a ritual. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it involves drawing ancient symbols on the ground and sacrificing bottles of Parrot Bay.
It's nose goes. They're playing nose goes. Let's be real. So I want to talk to you about the value of a 5 or of a 10. Right? We've talked about that scoring system a couple of times. There are some who believe that a 5 or a 10 should be unobtainable. It's perfection, and no one's ever perfect. You're always chasing it. You're shaking your head. Yeah. So where do you stand on that?
Yeah. So unless here, I'll give you my judging rundown. When I'm judging, unless I have a rubric telling me otherwise, I take a look at each of those individual categories that we were talking about, and if I am looking at that item, the craftsmanship only of this item, I'm going to award a 1 to 10 based on what order I feel, if I were the regent, I would be comfortable giving that. And so for me, 10 is masterhood. So it is definitely obtainable because that's what I want to see from my masters. So if someone enters a belt and I'm regent craftsmanship, only looking at that craftsmanship one, if that's worth a 6th, I would be okay giving up to a 6th order of the dragon or whatever your kingdom gives for him. I'm going to give that a 6. And then I'll move to scope and do the same thing with scope. And then I'll do the same thing with, and go through that way.
Now that's a really cool take, because it's also kind of you indicating what order you believe they deserve. Because I've had to look through A&S scores and see okay, this person got a 7. What order are they currently on? Okay, they're on a 3, so they definitely should get an upgrade. But it doesn't really tell me on its face what they should be at. So that's a cool system.
Yeah, I like it too because man, this delay's fun. I like it too because you're kind of in this situation where when you like you said, when you're passing stuff on to the monarch, it makes more sense because if Godric and all of his fellow judges come back and say overall this piece rated an 8, you're not really left questioning where order-wise I would let this fall. How does the system work in full, though? You mentioned there was 4 metrics. Is it drop the lowest? Is it just a set average of those 4?
Drop the lowest and drop the highest, right?
Of the 5.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, of the 5 judges. Yeah, so essentially we have 4 categories, and they are each given a percentage of your total score. So presentation and documentation is only going to be 10% of your total score. Then generally craftsmanship is 40%, scope is 25, and creativity is 25. And so I will, as a judge, enter those in, and we throw them into a spreadsheet that does all the math for us. And once it adds all that together, I get a 7.4. You take the 5 judges that have all done the same thing. Highest gets dropped, lowest gets dropped. And then you average the 3 that are left, and that's the.
See, I kind of like that
I do too.
because then your judges are coming to you and by consensus saying we all feel this is averaged out to a 10th order.
Without having to take a real guess at it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not reading tea leaves.
Now caveat, that's how I do it. That is not like a standard kingdom practice by any means.
Listen, this is your episode, so it's the right way.
Yeah, I was going to say.
This is what the Rising Winds does. Yeah. No, this is what I want the Rising Winds to do. How about that?
No, that makes sense. It really, really makes sense. And I think that our award system can be looked at and to some degree redesigned in that kind of basis. Because I've kind of set it on how Order of the Warrior works and stuff like that too. With looking at it instead of just these numbers that are kind of nebulous to like tourney wins at a duchy should be able to show up at 7, because that's where, well, at least for us, that's where it gets capped. We'd have to look at like everyone's Kapora if we were going to do something like that in the rules change or something. But I like it because it's trying to standardize where these awards sit, and I really, really enjoy that.
You said look at everyone's Kapora, and I started yawning.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
The cool part about doing it that way too is it gets built-in award recommendations from your judges, because like it's always a hassle. I've run tournaments, I've been regent, like to go back after these people have then donated 6 hours of their time to go through the tournament and say, hey, what would you recommend? Like you don't have to with this system.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's just built in.
Yeah, that's my favorite part about it is I can go, oh, that's a 7th. Well, they're on their 4th. Give them their next damn order. Like
because I always wanted to go to a 10-point system as well, but I never really equated in at least as good of words as you put out how to do that and why it works better that way.
This is why he's a goblin.
Sure.
And I think it depends on the tournament. I think we do half points or quarter points. I don't remember. Each tournament can have a different rule set, but we do, full points, half points is generally what we do with those.
That makes sense. So we talked about sewing a little bit, and that you want to get all of the others as well. When you, what masterhood do you already have? What did you actually get knighted off of? Was it owl? Did your belts go towards owls or dragons?
So all three is it. I have a master dragon.
Okay.
I have like 20 something awards spread throughout all three of them for belts.
Okay.
When I was coming up, there wasn't a precedent in our kingdom for what they were supposed to be. And so I would enter into tournaments, and one regent would give me dragons, the next regent would give me owls, the following regent would give me garbers, and it was incredibly frustrating.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So I think personally, belt should be owls, because that's what the rulebook has it under, or at least the wiki says has belts listed as an owl. The argument is that means leather belts, or that was the intention. So then the second choice for me would be garber, because I think it's a garb accessory. I am glad it's not considered garber in my kingdom, because I think I would never get masterhood if it was, just because of the standard of garb. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if you guys agree or disagree. I think Master Garber is probably the second hardest award in the game to get after Warlord, because of the Garber has this standard very similar to Warlord. You got to be as good as the other Master Garbers in your area. And that's really high when we have professional level, like you can make a career on garb people in the kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd agree. I just never really thought about it as far as that term in those terms, but I think I would actually 100% agree with you.
And it's got to be more expensive too. Master Garber, I mean, when you're making nice garb, that fabric's not cheap.
Right.
Well, that's one of the things I loved about belts to begin with, was that I can grab $9 of macrame in a $2 ring from Tractor Supply, and I can teach a kid how to make a belt. You know, you're at $10, and you can have something that's literally going to last you for the rest of your Amtgard career if you wanted to. And then when I'm making garb now, linen's $12 a yard, silk is more than that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not going to last anywhere near as long as that belt.
Yep.
It's going to get old. It's going to get torn.
It's going to be linen, so it's going to dissolve immediately. It just happens.
It's going to fade.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have paracord belts that are 10 years old that are still going strong. I have paracord belts that people have used to pull their cars out of ditches. Like these things are awesome, right?
I've seen it done.
Yeah, but then you look at the garb, and the garb, like we were talking about earlier, I think is a critical part of the advertising of our game and the look and feel of our game. But man, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So there is not all that unpopular ideology, especially in Winter's Edge, but I've seen it all over, that like, and I think I know what your answer is, but there's this ideology that for you to continue getting orders, for you to continue advancing down a path towards a belt, your next piece has to be better than the piece that came before it. And there has to be this constant state of improvement. And you know, based off the scoring system that you said, I kind of feel like you don't necessarily align with that, but I wanted to know your thoughts, because for me it seems like if you're good enough, you should be able to come in and just start moving towards a 10 without having to get better.
Yep, for sure. I think I think we see this quite a bit with seamstresses. We see people who come in who are professional, like costume makers, for instance, and they come in and their stuff is fantastic. And we don't see it that often. I have zero issue with they enter something, give them 3 at that time. They enter the next tournament, give them 3 more. Like fast track them to like what is kingdom level pretty quickly, and then make them compete for those last couple of awards is kind of my idea for that.
I remember this being a big deal. We were down, Teflon, you were there too. We were down in Florida at a Neverwinter event, and they had someone come in who was a professional seamstress. I don't know of what branch she worked in, whether it was costume or something else, but she had made a few pieces, and she got fast-tracked. It was the first time I'd ever seen it, where I think she'd turned in 5 or 6 pieces.
Wow.
And they were amazing, right? And she got first through, I think, 6th. And then it stopped there, and the climb started from her 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
I don't really
But
mind.
I think there's... Oh, go for it, sorry.
I don't really mind fast tracking. The only caveat to it that I have is like, I feel like they should have the same amount of work in the sense of they have to collect each box top, right? Like, but I don't have a problem, especially with someone who's professional, that you can be like, okay, you sold this, and this. I can just give you for what you did on this thing 1, 2, 3, and then now your entered stuff will start the count there or something like that, you know.
Well, and with that, whenever we take a look at, like, what do you do if someone comes in from another game, right? If you have a Laurel from SCA who got a Laurel for awards,
to mention this.
Are they gonna have to get better every time? Like to this day, my highest scoring belt, not even belt, my highest scoring entry that I've ever gotten was on a 5-point scale. It was a 4.97. I got my 4th order of the owl or something like that for that. Right? Like to this day, after like I've entered 4 or 5 tournaments since my masterhood. That is still my highest scoring thing. Should I have then had to get a 4.98 and a 4.99 to get the next one?
Absolutely not.
No, that's silly. It's dumb.
Well, so I was going to bring this up, people coming in from other games, because not necessarily Serpent related, right? But I mean, we don't really have a problem fast tracking people on other paths. We have speaking of Dag, there's a Dag player who has 9 orders of the Warrior in Winter's Edge and literally only comes through to hit the tournaments on his way to other Dag events. Bell is the guy's name.
Yeah.
And like, so this guy comes in and, you know, just dominates the tournament, you know, gets warriored up and then leaves. Never even picks up his orders because he's not there to get him. He doesn't play Amtgard, but like he's obviously good enough to have this the skill. So why is it okay for Warriors but not for Serpent?
Absolutely. And I think he was actually fast tracked to, I think, 5 or 6 as well.
Well, I think he swept the damn tournament and they just were like, here, 5.
Well, and then he won. He has individually won tournaments after that to get all the way up to his 9th. Mm-hmm. So he was actually in a race with Gunn. He wanted to get his sword belt in our kingdom before...
Just so he could never come to Amtgard and rub it in his face?
Gunn.
Yeah, okay.
Also, something to consider too, I think there was this old mindset of masterhood automatically equals knighthood. And I think, at least in our area, that is shifting and changing. I don't have any issue giving people masterhoods now if they don't play or if they're from another game or whatever, because I don't have any real, like, if that guy, for instance, I have zero issue giving that guy a warlord. He's not, at least for me as a voter, I'm not going to vote someone who doesn't play the game.
Right.
But it used to be if you got masterhood, it was like a guaranteed to get your belt, and that is I don't think anymore the case, at least in the areas that I've played in. So it doesn't bother me to fast track someone to masterhood if that doesn't automatically mean they're going to become a knight.
Right. So going along with that, is I guess what is the culture around elevating people to Serpent in your area? Is there like a teaching motif with it, or is it kind of just a model citizen kind of thing? I mean, I know it's hard to go into like real detail, but what's kind of the general idea, I guess?
Yeah, so teaching is a big part of it, but I don't know if it's necessarily like you have to sit down in a formal class and teach, but more you just got to be willing to share your knowledge, right? Like whether that is in a formal class or whether that's in tutorials or whether that's in one-on-ones, it doesn't really matter how. It's just if someone asks you a question, especially in the Serpent Knight, even if you don't know the answer, you need to know the people to point them to and be willing to do that. So I'm not. Go ahead, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, Sex Promethea from the Iron Mountains shared this thing the other day on Facebook that was 5 expectations of knighthood that need to die. And like the first one was a knight has to teach. Like that needs to die, and it should be a knight should share resources. Right? So, and it says, not every knight will have the time, money, or ability to teach on what they've mastered. Instead, knights should focus on helping people get the information they need, which can still be teaching, but isn't explicitly teaching. Mm-hmm. So I thought that.
I think the majority of the time it probably still is teaching. Like it is hard for me to fathom an idea or to like put in my head an idea where you are sharing information that isn't teaching or directing someone to someone who will teach them. You know what I mean? So I think that's more of a wording, and I don't want it's more than semantics. It's not like just a wordplay thing, but like I still put a lot of value on sharing the information. The majority of the time that probably will be teaching.
Yeah, like because I've had a very similar outlook because especially with seeing how Warlord Gunn operates from like a sword perspective, right? Like he's not great with a big group of people. However, anyone who comes and asks him anything, he will outright tell you whatever he thinks, or if he's like, that's not me, but you can ask this guy over here. And that in and of itself is still teaching in my book.
Yeah.
So
he'll point people towards good video resources that his knight showed him as he was coming up. There's a lot of different forms of teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think part of it too is also just mentality and attitude. Sir Declan that we were talking about earlier. I've never seen someone in Amtgard be able to like I don't want to say put up with randos as well as he does. Like he'll be setting up his tent and he'll have 3 people he's never met before come up and ask him questions about Serpent related stuff. And he stops what he's doing and he'll spend an hour with these kids he's never met and he probably will never meet again. But that is a very good interaction with a Serpent Knight and they'll bring him stuff and he like, you got to ask though. You got to ask, do you want me to critique this like I would a judge in an ANS tournament? Or do you want me to just talk about what I like about it? Because certain like those are 2 very different things, right? And if a rando at an event comes up and says, "Hey, look at my belt," I'm not gonna go, "Oh, but you missed this and you missed that." I'm gonna be like, "Dude, that's so cool. How long did it take?" You know what I mean? You start up the conversation and you do all that. Like, but there are some people who will come up and say, "Hey, critique this. Let me know what I need to get better," and then you can switch in. And being able to do those at the right time, I think, is a very important aspect of being a Serpent Knight.
That's fair.
No further questions.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. So, what kind? You mentioned that you dabble. We talked about a little bit of that. Have you done any kind of leatherworking stuff? I think you said that you've done a little bit there. Is that a big interest that you just haven't moved into yet? No.
Nah, not a whole lot. I did a little bit, but it was more in like armor making, trying to cut out lamellar and punching lamellar and weaving that. And I am not, it's funny. I am not artistic when it comes to like drawing, which is what tooling, originally comes for. Like I can't draw to save my life, which is why I make digital awards because I can put stuff together in Photoshop pretty well, but I can't draw at all. And so the leatherworking is kind of an extension of that, where I struggle with any art that I have to do with my hands is difficult. And I've given it a couple of shots, done a couple of classes here or there, but not something that I super enjoyed.
That's kind of my thing when I sew is like, I like sewing because like the machine will do a straight line for me. There's a lot of places I can hide my crimes in there. You just hem something, all those nasty little edges are gone.
Yeah, when I tried to learn tooling the last time, like it was just one of those discs, and my disc became a bowl because I don't understand how hard you hit the thing.
He's overhand with a hammer, like
no, you just. This is all about what Godric said. You repackage it now. What you were doing is you were making a cup necklace.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
To have your meat out of.
Yep.
So
you need to get yourself you're talking about the sewing stuff. You need to get yourself a serger if you don't have access to one. You talk about hiding your airs. Those things are the best.
It'll do it for you mostly. Yeah. The problem is when you have to thread the damn thing. That everybody says like, oh, just tie your threads off and whatever. I got mine from a yard sale and it was just completely broken down. So having to thread a serger sucks. You should get an order just for being able to thread a serger. Like if you can do it right there with 5 judges standing over you, they should put you on like your 5th and just call it clean. Like he can thread that, it's good. It's fine.
It's one of those where every time I change it, I have to pull up a 30-minute YouTube video and like pause it and then do the step and then play it. Like it's a hassle to change it.
I swear to God, I
would
would rather do any kind of mechanic work to a car than even touch a serger.
Don't you feel like a little bit like you're removing a pharaoh's brain through his nose for some of those parts? Because you got to get like a hook down in it and like pull. It sucks so bad.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about from the perspective of a new person, who they have been to one of their first Kingdom level tournaments. They're starting to look around at some of the ANS stuff there and finally seeing good garb for the first time and good garb accessories for the first time, and they decide that they would like to try this out. I have actually pointed some of our new people towards your videos for making a belt because it's fairly inexpensive.
Yep.
And easy to do. What are some other good beginner stuff that they could make and begin entering in tournaments if they were interested, if they had a perspective close to yours where they want to get very competitive into ANS tournaments?
So I think it really depends on the format of your tournament. So for instance, when I first started entering, we had a category system and there were like 12 categories and you got 3 points if you scored first in the category and 2 points if you scored second and 1 point if you scored third. Right. And so one of my early tournament wins was spamming one thing in every category because I knew I was going to be one of 2 people entering into the digital art. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So if that's your tournament format, just go really wide and you have a good chance of winning because not very many other people are willing to make that many things going wide.
This is how I would approach things like that. Knowing how your tournaments from a competitive level on ANS, knowing how your tournaments are scored and how they're set up is very, very important. So like I've recently entered into a disc golf bag tag tournament thing. And when you go to an event and you turn in your tags, you get a certain amount of points based on what number tag you have. But the value of 1 through 10 is exactly the same. So I don't have to go challenge the number 1 guy over and over again. I can go get 10 and not worry about it. So knowing these things is really good for the competitive nature.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it changes the way that you prep for tournaments. And this is, you talk about new players. If you want to seriously compete in anything, whether it's battle games, individually or on a company level, if you want to compete in a tournament, if you want a fighting tournament or an ANS tournament, it's going to take some practice and some prep before you get there on the day of. And if your the ANS tournament is capped at like 3 items or 5 items or something like that, then that's going to change your prep than if it's like the old systems where you had to qual with like 12 different items. You know what I mean? So like if you're only doing 3 to 5 things, that's going to change how you prep leading up to the months beforehand than if you need to make 10 things, for instance.
Yeah. You can keep going. We don't need him.
Okay, cool. No worries. I was like, do I need it? Okay.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate filling the time. I was going to try and get in something, but like, Just couldn't be there.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, like find out the rules for your tournament, right? Like our recent ones online have been capped at 3 items. Because it takes a long time to judge, and we're doing the online venue, and it's new stuff for everybody. So if I know that, and there's no bonus, like currently our last couple of tournaments, there's been no bonus to go wide. If I enter 3 belts, I'm going to score the same, theoretically, if all the items are the same score, than if I do garb, a belt, and an award.
Right.
But there are some tournaments where if you enter 3 separate things or 3 different categories, you're going to get a bonus point. And that's huge for your total score if you're trying to win. So what should a new player be looking at if you want to win A&S tournaments is find out the rules of the tournament and prep yourself out beforehand. Like I'm a spreadsheet guy, and so I have 8 weeks to a tournament. I've got my 5 things that I'm going to make. I have the materials I need, how much it's going to cost. I have roughly how long I think it will take me to do this. I need to work on this project this week, and I need stuff done. I actually schedule out when I'm going to do my documentation, like, because for me, I approach it the same way that like high-end fighters work on their diet, and they work on their, like your specific drills. Like I'm showing up on that day to win. And if I'm not showing up on that day to win, I don't want to participate.
Yeah. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Except for the diet thing, I understand it too.
Yeah.
No, I've always struggled with A&S tournaments as a whole, because a lot of the ones that I would have had, not as much recently, but like prior to my break, I guess, is a lot of, like you had said, going wide and stuff like that. So I'd have about 3 pieces. I was like, I'm really, really proud of these, but if I'm going to compete, I need 8 more pieces, and I don't know how I'm going to get there.
We have culturally shifted, even pre-COVID. Probably the last 2 years of tournaments have been 5-item maxed. We have really gone away. Like our quals isn't 12 items anymore or something ridiculous. I think it's like 3 and 5 for quals, and then our Dragon Masters are capped generally at 5 items as well. Like I think I like that format better, because I would rather put a lot of effort into a few things than not. But it also, from a competitive side, is pretty interesting too, because if you have someone who's really, really good at one thing, and you have a garber who is entering in like what they want to be their masterhood quality item, if you only have 3 or 5 items and that score or that item scores significantly higher than everything else there, it has a chance of winning by itself. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's statistically not going to happen all that often, but if you have someone that enters a 10 item across the board and everything else is at 7, I guess I don't know how you guys do your scoring, but for us, we take the average of the competition. Say the average is like a 5.6. You're going to take that and subtract it from your total score for the item. So if it's like my is a 7 and the average is a 5, I'm going to gain 2 points towards my total score for that particular item. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What you're getting into is really the like into the weeds, quote unquote, about how the tournament. No. This is good. This is good.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
getting there. Some people may not recognize it, because we've done some where I think, if I remember correct, you subtract a 3, so you're trying to get rid of the quote unquote average item, and you're getting more points based on being better than average. Is roughly what the idea is.
Well, but we actually get the true average of all the items.
Right.
We take, if there are 12 items entered and that average happens to be a 6.5, my particular item that scores a 7.5 will only accrue me 1 total point towards winning.
Right. I really like that, and at the same time I don't, because I like the idea of cutting out what is considered an average item overall, but there's a lot of merit to be had in averaging the actual event as well, because you get what everyone's looking for the objective, like or subjective rather, competition that way, right? Inside the competition itself. So, I don't know. That's really interesting. I'd have to really think about that one to how I would prefer it. But again, like this is what I like about.
I like it quite a bit. Oh, sorry.
I
like it quite a bit, because if you get a really, really good competition, it's going to be different. Say you have like 4 masters trying to win the thing. The average of the competition goes up, which means like if you're looking to give awards on it, it shows a little, like it goes into the quality of the competition that you're around. If I smoke a tournament, but it has a bunch of Shire level people in it, that doesn't as a master, that doesn't really mean much for me.
Right.
But if I win a tournament at Keep or Olympiad and it's got a bunch of people in it, that average there shows, okay, the average of the tournament was an 8. If we're going by what I said earlier, that's an 8th order of the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy got a 10. That means a lot more than this guy got a 10 and the average was a 4.
Going into this makes me really want the 10-point system and looking at it as an orders thing more and more. Like it's like I was already there. Just on I like the 10-point scale better than 5 because people relate to it a little better. But relating it to the orders and the averages like this, like it's pretty solid now. I think this is where I want to try and move things.
So this may not be an objection. I'm still learning about the system, but using that exact same philosophy, would you not also be in a situation now where, let's say, new Amtgard or Cabbage goes to Keep and enters an item for the first time and is entering it against Godric and all of these other masters, and the average is an 8.3. And new Amtgard or Cabbage's piece is good, but it's good enough that it would be worth a third. Now, he has 0 orders right now, so that's great. This system would not hamper new Amtgard or Cabbage because his is going to be a 3. The fact that the average is higher doesn't play in because he's not going for an overall tournament win. Have I understood the system correctly?
Yeah, so part of the thing that I kind of preach to everybody who will listen is on the ANS stuff, max out your local level stuff before you go to Kingdom. Now, I would not say that at all for fighting, because I want more people fighting because it's more fun for everybody if you get 75 people in a tournament. Mm-hmm. So it's a little different there. But like for me, I won my first Kingdom Dragon Master with 3 orders was my highest ANS award. And so my first best in show that I beat someone that got a 9th, and an 8th, and I got a 4th on my first best in show. Like that sucked. Like that was more frustrating for me as a new player than kind of what you're talking about over here, right? So I always tell people, max out your local stuff, then travel to your local duchy and max your stuff out there. And once you get into 6, 7, then go in and enter kingdom level stuff.
That mindset is really what I drive into of talking about trying to, like you were saying, max out your local areas first. Because the idea is to bring the highest level of competition to a kingdom level thing. And so with fighting, I kind of agree at the same time. However, we just don't hold enough local tournaments, I think, is our issue. I don't know if you guys have the same problem in Rising Winds. Like, none of our shires are really being like, hey, we're doing a tournament, everybody should come, or the baronies or duchies or whatever like that.
What's the forest group people?
Everliving Woods.
Everliving Woods, yeah.
Now known as the Forest Group.
Hello, Everliving Woods. I promise I know your name.
Our next monarch is from there.
Is from Forest Group?
Oh no,
Clover, I'm so sorry. I've worked with him behind the scenes on this for so long. He's trying. He's doing.
He uses
his best.
flashcards.
But it's just adjusting our expectations whenever we enter different things, and I think that bringing it to competing at Shire, Barony, Duchy, Kingdom, things like that is a better way of trying to get the cultural shift to move than it is trying to be like, well, now listen, a Kingdom level tournament, it's really hard, so you're going to get harsh critiques or blah, 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 blah. Just, I don't know. I don't agree with that.
You shouldn't get harsh critiques, first off. I mean...
So, question, this is another tournament format question for you. We, at least as of the last time that I had seen it, it could have changed with the online stuff, had started moving our tournaments more towards the categories were the awards. So, like, you were entering something into Owl, into Dragon.
Yeah.
Do you like a format like that? Do you not like it? To me, it seems like it would pair very well with the 10-point system that was representative of what order you think, but I might be missing something here.
I like it overall because there are a bunch of things in our game that can fall into multiple categories. So if I, as a judge, am getting a leather piece that is pretty well constructed, but the artwork on it is terrible, how do I judge that? Right? Or belts that can really realistically fall into all three.
Mm-hmm.
If I have this particular category where this is, I know what I'm judging it on. And really, as a judge, if you're judging leather for the construction, that is a very different skill set than the art and the tooling and the paint that goes on it.
This is the conversation I had with Donnie the
I
other
love
day about
formats
garb.
like that.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh no, go for it. You're good, man.
No. I was just pointing out. I had a on the last episode with Sir Darko. I had a very similar conversation about garb, like how I am more into the construction of it and less about the fancy dancy, applique or whatever. And so it's one of those things where I would never enter a piece because they're going to go, it doesn't have any applique.
Garb sucks because it has its own Garber thing.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of, I think, a downfall.
But just in general, knowing
yeah.
here's what I'm looking at for this category.
Yeah,
looking at
absolutely.
construction,
Like you were
looking
saying,
at artwork.
Godric,
I like that.
Having a piece of leatherwork in front of you and it's entered in the owl category, it's so much easier to judge overall a piece that way.
Yeah.
Now,
So can I go on a tangent?
Oh, yeah.
please, yeah.
Okay. My favorite tournament structure that I have seen done is from the SCA, and I have not convinced anybody to let me run it in Amtgard because it's a kingdom-wide type of tournament. So essentially what you do is all of your local parks hold a tournament, and you can enter 5 things per person per category, right? Garber, owl, or 3, whatever,
Sure.
arbitrary thing. The top so many from each park, say 10 in each category from each park, get bumped up to your duchy. And then your duchies do the same thing. And so you got to then make a feeder system, right? But like this duchy is over these 6 shires. And so you have 60 items theoretically for each category feeding up to the duchies. And then I don't know how you guys work. We have grand duchies, which we have 3 of them, and they're pretty much for the states that we're in. And so you would have all of your duchies, which generally there's 2 to 3 of those per grand duchy, feeding in to the grand duchy. And you do that competition again. And then the top 10 items from each of those keep pyramiding up until you get to kingdom level. And it is the top 10 items in each category from all across the kingdom. And it lets your local people see all of the stuff that's there. Like your Shire level people are seeing the stuff that's getting entered in the Shire level. So the people who can give awards are still seeing all of the things at that level. And then as it goes up, you can look at your guy who's from, Shire bum nowhere, who is now competing with Master from this duchy. That's pretty cool. And you can actually see them side by side and see how far you go up the tournament, the pyramid. Does that make sense? Like, did I explain it well?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
For me, I thought it was explained very well. I've actually had a very similar idea. It's not quite some from the ground up as that, which I really actually enjoy better than my idea is.
Well, in Winter's Edge, we don't have the structure for it. We only have, 1 duchy?
Well, sure. 2? Sylvan Glade still duchy
really?
right now? I can't remember.
Yeah, we might have 2 duchies. No grand duchies, although it does exist per Arcapora.
How many parks do you have total? Roughly.
I think like someone, you can check the org. I want to say it's like 40 or 50.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
It's
We
wide.
are a massive kingdom.
We're at 13.
16.
Sorry, 16.
There's the difference.
But I was thinking.
I'll get into this later.
Sorry. I was thinking about cutting the top 3 in each category effectively in a kingdom tournament. So then you're not having to waste as much time as a judge. You can put a lot more energy in those top 3 items because you can tell what's the top 3-5 items that are in a category or something like that pretty much off a glance, and then go into detail only on the ones that need to be graded. But this kind of does the same thing, and I really like the aspect of it bringing the structure of Shire to Barony to everything in. I think that's a really cool system, and I say you should just do it. Don't even wait for the kingdom to allow you to. Just do it.
Well, I'll blow your mind. We're talking about cultural differences between Amtgard and Dag earlier. Cultural difference between SCA and Amtgard. SCA, to enter in one of these local tournaments, you got a day trip to an event and pay a day trip fee to enter your stuff.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the fit Amtgard would have if you paywall a tournament?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they paywall it like 3 times before you get it up to the top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We've talked very briefly about this before, but there's other things that, like pay-wise that I think that that they do as well. This is only tangentially related to ANS in that it is food. ANS sometimes is done as food, and I like food. But I know that there's a lot of other games too where you don't get to eat at the tournament as part of your gate fee. You know, the food is something that you sign up for separately. So you know how many people you're going to be feeding ahead of time as what we would call feastocrat, because only 50 people paid for food, and only 50 people are getting that food, period.
Meal tickets
sucks.
or vendors, because DAG and stuff sometimes work off the vendor thing where like you go to an event and you get feast on Saturday night, and then that's it. You're expected to pay vendors effectively or bring your own.
Yep.
That's how the Olympics event that I was talking about earlier, that's how they operate. They do a one meal on Saturday night. It's catered. It's on time. It's fantastic.
Some
all
shade.
The time.
The shade with the on time.
It is. Because, and it will never change in Amtgard, because if we get rid of Feast, we get rid of a third of our rose opportunities. And I understand why it's there, but I love going to O's because Olympics is the event, right. Because I know what I need to prepare. They know what they need to prepare. The food is always on time. It's always professionally done. After a long day of fighting in tournaments, to not have to worry if my chicken's cooked all the way is just something I don't get Amtgard too often, you know?
No, so like you bring up the point about losing some of the rose opportunities, and I actually don't think we lose them as much. It's just a different creative outlet for it, right? Like you can then bring and be like, hey, I'm going to be making pork or something like that. So, hey, before the event, Flo, do you want a pork sandwich or whatever? And then just do it yourself.
Of course I do.
Right. And then that way you collect it. You effectively make your meal ticket, and then you can be a feast person or a feast vendor or whatever and still be doing things for the game like that.
To the original point, we would lose people if we didn't provide food at events, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Like, no food. Well, if you pay an extra $2, Sir Gillen will hit you in the face with a ham sandwich. Like, that's what we can do for you.
That's only $2. I'll take it. So I brought this up for a reason.
They also bring in food trucks too.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No. The food trucks. I brought this up for a reason, and I was going to mention vending is bigger at a lot of these other places, which is something that I don't know how that would work out in Amtgard. One of the side effects of being the free game is that we have some people that might not be able to come to events if there wasn't also 3 squares being provided. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, let's just be
some
be
of my
honest
earliest Amtgard events that I went to, like I would not have lived through them if there wasn't food provided, because I was very broke at the time.
Yeah, me as well. So I love the food vending idea. I also think that it gives more outlets to for people to shine, for people to become those food vendors. We have a lot of people in our kingdom who are great. They're great at making food, at being that person that is doing all of the feasty stuff and kitchen stuff.
Or things like that.
Taverns, yeah. Man, do you remember the tavern that Semi used to run?
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome. I don't remember the name of it, the Wild Boar or Boar's Head or something. But yeah.
I think Boar's Head is lunch meat.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't that then.
Tupperware.
Someone's going to correct me.
Yeah.
We lose a little bit of that when vending isn't really an option. And because we're providing the food for free, I don't think that a vendor could come out and do very well. You know, we're propagating our own problem here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why would I pay for that vendor when I can get the uncooked chicken for free?
It also depends on your site, right? Like the main camping site that in the Rising Winds we use for all of our events, but Keep has a little pizza shop on campus, and so part of our contract is we are not allowed to bring in outside food vendors, and it's so like it kind of, some places it doesn't always work too great. So I get that. It's just, that's one of the reasons I love Olympics so much, is I love the food vendors and I love the catered food.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's my second tie-in to that, to the reason that I brought it up. Food is made at ANS tournaments a lot, and at least here, maybe not in all of Amtgard, it's kind of seen as the lazy way to
I need to put in so many entries, and this is a free space.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a crock pot dish, or I'm going to do a dessert.
Betty Crocker brownies, bud. Come on.
nobody doesn't like Sarah Lee. But have you ever done any food entries? How do you feel about food entries?
So I haven't done any, but we have a guy actually. His name's Zach in our kingdom. He is at, I want to say 9. It might be 8, but I'm pretty sure 9. And he's a professional chef, and he comes in for ANS tournaments and he's done a couple where he cooks in front of the judges. He's done some and he brings all of his stuff, and he has talked about this in the past, how difficult it is to make something at home and bring it to Amtgard and have it be good.
Yeah.
And so he has overcome that by bringing all of his stuff to Amtgard and doing it there in front of the judges, which is pretty cool.
If somebody did a hibachi restaurant style, like they did the onion volcano and everything in front of me as a judge,
you just get your belt. I don't.
Like here,
you guys
can have mine. I don't even.
Hold on. Here's your belt. Ding 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 ding.
You guys couldn't do it though because your judges are anonymous for some silly reason.
Yeah, right.
Feed me through the curtain. I don't care.
No, see, that's actually a good point because they are anonymous unless it has to be not done, like for Bardic type entries and things like this. So it becomes a disservice to those who do things from a demo perspective to have them be known and the other ones not. Like I don't understand the hiccup there. It's not something that I care about, I guess.
It's just you get one of those, like at a Catholic church, you get a little confessional, and you go in and you present your entry.
Stop.
Play with me.
Judge, forgive me for I have created a food item. I don't.
We didn't take the little mesh screen out. I'm just going to push this brownie through. It's like Play-Doh. I'm gonna,
And food items in Amtgard are either like the best thing you've ever had or the absolute worst thing you've ever had,
And both of them are not exactly the fault of the person, or well, at least the worst thing, right? Like sometimes it just doesn't travel well and you didn't know, and it sucks, like you were saying earlier, because I like food as the entry, but I personally hate judging it because I'm super picky. So I'm just like, okay, so who likes food? Because it's not me. So Lucas or Flo, tell me what I should grade this as a judge, and I hate that.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I try to account for whenever I run tournaments, is if any of my judges are like that, either A, super picky, or B, like lactose intolerant, and we've had that before. And so, and so I have a judge, or like when I run tournaments, I try not to be one of the judges. And so I can fill in gaps when needed. And that's one of those gaps, is if someone has a food allergy, then me, or I can grab someone else if I know beforehand.
Right.
Hey, you don't have to judge this.
If you're ever looking for a food judge,
just holla at your boys.
Yeah.
Well, so this is something I wanted to ask. A lot of the people that we've talked to on Serpent Month have like a specific thing that they're into at the moment. And it's not always like, what they got their belt for. Like when we talked to Sir Darko, he built a rock climbing wall. Like that's not even like, I don't know how you call that. So what are you into right now? I know with online ANS being a thing, there's people are branching out into a lot of new stuff. Is there something new you're picking up or something that you're particularly, kind of stuck on?
Yeah, for sure. The last 2 online tournaments, all of my entries have been Garb, which has been hard for me because I'm not very good at Garb, and it kills me to put my like tournament reputation on the line on something that I'm not 100% confident in yet. But it's been good. I've actually been making quite a bit of stuff out of silk. You can get these; they're called saris, and they're from India.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you get them, and they're like. Yeah, and you can get those. Essentially, it's 5 to 6 yards of silk for $30 to $35, which is way cheaper than what you can get it for if you buy it, normally.
Yeah.
And they come with all these beautiful patterns on them. And so I've been working on my goal. Maybe we'll see. I would love to get Masterhood and Garber without learning to applique. I don't think it's going to happen.
Same.
But I'm going to try
same.
it.
I would love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm going to do it with historical patterns. I'm a sucker for the historical stuff, and I'm going to do it with hard to work with fabrics like silk and, some of the other stuff that most people don't normally our Garbers don't normally work with.
That'd be really cool. I actually fell down a rabbit hole that I still haven't climbed out of. There's several YouTubers that do like historical, mostly like Victorian sewing. And they either do it by hand or they do it with like time period appropriate machines. But some of the craftsmanship that goes into that, like using horsehair, like as a canvas, as a interfacing material, and then the way that you arrange it so the material will peak in certain places is really cool. Like I've never seen anything like that in Amtgard. It's something that I'd like to try.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to find that stuff.
Horsehair?
Man, I'd be so afraid.
It's right down the road.
The canvas.
Oh. We don't have any
so
canvas
afraid
horses.
to put all that energy into something like that and then mess it up or like rip it. Or like if I'm gonna hand sew something, I don't ever want to take it on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I've hand sewed a few pieces now I've had to hand sew some things in a few pieces that's worked out okay. I think if you're just careful with it, you can pull it off.
I remember something else I wanted to ask you. We've had some fairly strong opinions this month on court garb, and what are and I don't want you to go into this blind. This isn't a gotcha question or anything.
Yeah.
Some of the people feel like court garb is maybe a little too fancied up nowadays. Like we heard court in the word court garb and really went for like Victorian era ball gown equivalent stuff, where your court garb could be something like I'm Flo the Viking, and so my court garb is like, bits and pieces of
Hagar the Horrible.
Yeah, it's Hagar the Horrible or something like that. Do you have a strong opinion on court garb one way or another? Isn't that used to be a drinking game?
Not really.
Hagar the Horrible was a newspaper comic.
Yeah.
It was, and they came out with a board game that was a drinking game for it. I used to have it when I was little.
Oh,
I collect board games. You can't tell. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't have a super strong opinion. I try and make most of the garb that I have is I try to be fancier because I like the DAG and SCA standards, but I don't particularly have anything that's specifically for court. So like most of the garb that I wear, I try and have it be like if someone sees it on the field, they're like, oh wow, that's cool. I want to go get a better look at that. But when I buy that from people who are better than me at making it, I want it to be sturdy enough to be able to fight into, Yeah. So like the only piece of actual court garb I have one of the things that I love a whole lot is Mongolian culture. So I've got some deals and some, of the Mongolian garb, and I have a particular pair of boots that I will wear for court. But other than that, everything else that I wear to court is stuff I will go field in. And I want it to look good enough to be at court and people go, wow, but I want it to be made strong enough to where I can fight in it for 5 years and it not break on me.
Yeah.
I would be so thrilled if everybody showed up to court in ball gowns and shit. Like, no joke. That would be so awesome.
I'll just go home.
Oh.
Yeah, I was saying,
Teflon,
so
where did you get a ball gown that fits you?
All right, if
we
someone
were just
made a ball
talking
gown
about
for me
some
that
of
it
the,
fit, I'd totally wear it.
we were just talking about some of the cost benefits of Amtgard. I don't feel like that would fit in with the
right. Yeah, like that. I mean, you make a great point because a lot of people like, oh, I'm going to go court garb and I'm going to go all out and do all these things, and I don't think it really makes people necessarily feel down on their stuff, but it might, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. But it's kind of a weird one too because you don't want to like stunt someone's creativity or anything either. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell someone not to wear nice garb just because it'll make people feel bad. Like, don't wear nice garb and then tell them their garb sucks. Like, that's a dick move.
Yeah.
Nah, you've worn your peasant clothes. Hold my top hat.
Nice burlap sack, loser.
Doyle rules.
Yeah, I was going to say we're a villain in an 80s movie now. I don't know.
Some of the coolest court garb that I've seen, though, we have a guy, a knight in our kingdom, who's trying to get Paragon Peasant or Master Peasant or whatever. And
get
he
Subway
for
on
years,
the phone.
Well, he for years would only play with, he would field with just a single short. But his garb was like, it looked like what you would think of if you're pulling a peasant from Braveheart or from like one of those type of movies. And he would walk into court and he would have this garb on and he would sit down at like right outside of the door to go into court and like beg for food and like he hammed it up and it was awesome. Like it was really cool.
See, that's Master Mask to
Rising
me.
Winds, why haven't you given this person their Master Peasant? I don't even know them and I'm on their
Because it's
side.
a penalty. I hate this thing. I hate Master Peasants and Paragon Peasants and everything because it's just a Master Mask to me at that point.
It's not about you. It's about their new Master Peasant.
What's the sash for a Master Peasant? Is it just a strip of burlap?
See?
No.
There's a problem again because it's a penalty.
No. I've got it. The strip that they use is a stolen strip from another. It can be anything.
It's clear. It's clear with 2 silver stripes on the other side. That's how I guess it would have to be.
It's just 2 pieces of silver with nothing in between.
Yeah.
What they need to do is whenever they change over, get rid of Pally, Anti-Pally, all of the Paladin and Anti-Paladin garb that has to get thrown away because it's no longer needed. That's what we should make into the peasant stuff.
I love it.
I have a compatriot in this. Good.
Just a big pile of garb that the peasants are sorting through.
You got to drag it behind the car
It's all
or
the
something
phoenixes
first,
that we
so
no
it
longer
looks-
need.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Oh,
can
man.
take my phoenix from my cold dead hands.
It's right in there. I'll just take it off the wall.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, wait, hold on.
What? Oh, you do have my phoenix.
What now, Flo? What now,
no.
Sir Flo?
How did you find it?
It's been holding my phone and car keys.
At least it's getting some use.
Yeah. Oh, come on now. I was sitting on it earlier, but we ate Five Guys, and I didn't want to do that to your nighting pillow. It seemed wrong.
This is what I have to deal with. These two
We're lovely,
jokers.
you know it. Sir Godric, we're rapidly approaching that point where we ask the question we ask everyone, and it's always the hardest question. Do you have a favorite moment or crazy story in your Amtgard career? And if you need time to think about it, if these guys have any other questions for you, they can float them.
So I actually put some thought into this one before I came on. So the one of my favorite stories was we had just come back a year after our park had been started. So, fairly new player, don't even really have garb yet, new type of player. And the local duchy had raided our little park. And when they did, it was awesome. We actually got to see, how classes were supposed to be played and good stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And they were great. They traveled to us once a month and would come fight with us. It was great. Well, they ended up leaving their banner at the park one day, and we call it a banner. I mean, it's 6-foot banner. It's a fairly large thing.
Yeah.
And so our park monarch got on Facebook and started hamming it up. The Grand or the Duchy of Griffin's Perch has left their banner and their servitude to us, their new overlord. It just hammed it up. And
Right.
the monarch of their park did the same thing. Everyone was in on it. It was a good joke, And so it got this built up thing into, we decided to make it a day event. And so we picked a Saturday, and one of the local Amtgarders had some beautiful property, and it was 15 or 20 acres, and it ended up both sides were trying to call in their allies, and so different parks were throwing in their weight behind the established duchy or the new shire, the rebellious shire, and so we show up, and this is I think I had been to one Kingdom event at that point, and so I'm still very new, and I had told our monarch, hey, I have an idea for how we can win. Because essentially it was an hour-long battle. It was the two teams against each other. The duchy could win by shattering all of us or reclaiming the flag. We won by maintaining the flag or shattering all of them. We weren't going to shatter all of them. We knew, they show up. They have probably at least 2-1 on their numbers after all the chips had fallen. They had all the knights, they had all the established players. We had only been apart for a year and a half. And so I remember telling the monarch, our park monarch, I said, hey, I've got a plan for how we can win this. And this was 7-7. And it involved a bunch of walls and a bunch of, stuff like that. And so he pulls me up on this stump and he goes, all right, say the plan. And I'm freaking out, and I've got all these guys in front of me taking a knee in armor and like these people. So at the time in Indianapolis, there were 4 or 5 duchies within a 2-hour drive. So like we had probably 100 people at this day event. And so I'm up on this little stump, here's the plan to the 30 of our guys that are there, and we're outnumbered 2-1. And so we get the fight, or we start the fight, and they give me the flag, and the plan was for me to book it to one corner of the property, hide the flag, throw all my 6th level wizard walls and all the 7/7 nonsense that there used to be around it, and then I was going to run to the other end of the property, climb a tree, and wait. And because then we would win, because they couldn't shatter us all because I was alive. And so the hour battle goes on. Essentially, the other team had shattered everyone else on my team in the first 20 minutes. Like it was a slaughter. It was really bad. And so after an hour, we ended up winning, and no one found me. And so I remember they were calling, they're like, hey, you can come out now. And it was those nights that I didn't know from the other park. So I didn't come out of the tree because I thought they were trying to trick me, And so it took my park monarch to say, all right, you can come out, and come down. And I remember we won and we shouldn't have won. And they threw me up on their shoulders. And it was just a really cool moment. And so why I think that is pertinent to Amtgard, and I try and do it now, is make the new player the hero. That is something that I will never forget. I did straight new. I remember I had just hit level 6 on wizard because I had to for this plan to work, no garb, loner weapons, all this stuff. and making the new player the hero is something that I think will not grow our game, but it instills something in people that they matter, and it's something that they're going to want to keep playing in. And that was just such a fun day, a fun event. I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can get really behind the idea of making the new player the hero, because everybody needs a story like yours, or needs to hear a story like yours to really get them invested in the game. And it's not a hard thing to do. I mean, really, all you have to do is give them the opportunity and then just stand behind them while they're doing their thing and cheer them on.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that expensive a cost to make that happen.
Jay and I may or may not have had rules made against us because of the exact same kind of thing whenever we were in 7/7.
I was going to say, you've done wacky shit with walls, and you've done decoy, hide the flag.
Boundaries at local park was definitely my fault. Because I was like, oh, we can touch our flag at all times? Well, see you guys. I'm going to go in the woods and run off.
I remember when Banner Wars was still a thing and the Triads were going to be going, Jay was going to make our flag it
was like a concrete slab
12 inch thick, 4 foot by 2 foot flag, because there was no real rules on what the flag could be. So they had to pick the flag up and bring it across the little bridge and things for Banner Wars. And he's like, if they want to do it, fine. They deserve to win.
As if Amtgarders don't have enough back problems. Thanks, bud.
We miss you, Jay.
I remember at the beginning of that fight, trying to heat weapon a knight, and I didn't even know that there were pally and anti-pally at this point. And I remember this knight just kind of looking at me and okay, and then continued to hit people with his pole, and I remember, sorry about that. I remember that was devastating to me. It was what's going on? I have no clue. And wide-eyed in battle, and then they gave me the flag. They're go, go, go. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
Absolutely.
It was so fun.
Everyone, like Lucas said, everyone deserves to have that memory. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know, this is where I run into the problem of balance-wise and what the classes do and things, and V8 is so much better overall, but you miss some of that kind of stuff, or at least I do. I don't see that kind of thing as often anymore, and it's kind of a shame, because I can't tell if it's just nostalgia classes or if it's just where the game state was in 7 and 6, because I really think I had more fun in those systems.
It can be both.
Yeah.
Man, I love Battle Cleric in 7. I loved being able to be one step behind your front line.
Yeah.
Doing things like Swords to Plowshare.
That stupid spell.
I love Swords to Plowshare so much. You stick a dagger in your buddy's back belt pocket, And then Swords to Plowshare, and it's an instant heal.
Yeah.
Extended onto the shield person who only has one sword.
Yeah.
That's on the other team. So, oh no, they're healed and now their weapon's gone. I hate that stupid spell.
That'd be a cool one to make a comeback. That and, and Mimic.
You got to get off the Mimic thing, man.
I'm not, and I won't.
It won't happen.
What was your favorite class?
I
in
really
7?
miss the per lives. Oh, sorry. I liked probably Wizard was the most fun, but really I only was able to max like Wizard and maybe Monk, and then it switched to 8.
Gotcha.
So I came in on just the tail end of 7, and the transition to 8 was hard for me because of the life count changing. Like that, I really liked the idea of being able to shatter out, because it made the battle games actually, like, I had to think about, is the action I'm about to do actually worth it? And I feel like V8 is kind of missing that now, because we get to the point, at least at park level, I don't know if you guys are like this too, where if I get hit with any CC,
Yep.
I'm just gonna
Dead.
I'm gonna tap out and go back, and that's frustrating. And if I only had 5 lives on that, you can bet I'm gonna sit there for that minute. You know what I mean? Or however long it is, because I don't
5
want to
minutes.
lose one of those precious material,
Man,
Yeah.
life counts is such a weird thing too. Like, I'm with you to some degree with the whole, that makes death matter with life counts, and that's a really good thing. But man, is it punishing for a newer player at the same time. So I don't know, like, it's really... It can't be barbarians get 3 lives at first level. I'd almost wish it'd be the opposite, where like if you're level 1, you end up with more lives but less abilities, and then as you level up, if you're 6, you have like 3 lives and you have all these abilities and you're really powerful, but you have to make really hard choices with your lives. Could be really interesting. I don't know.
Take this 6th level ability, but also you lose one of your lives.
Yeah, something weird like that.
That'd be cool.
So I like the balance of the rock, paper, scissors of V8. I think that's very fun from a competitive standpoint to try and, like, in Phoenix League, trying to figure out what team is what my team needs to be able to beat your team.
Yeah.
I like that quite a bit, but I do miss the life count. I feel like there's a way you can do both.
Yeah,
where you can
there
still
has to be a
have
middle ground somewhere.
Yeah. Because where casters were 10-1 or 5-1, that stuff was nonsense. Like,
Yes.
that was not a fun thing to do. But there's got to be a way to do the rock, paper, scissors, but still make your death mean something.
Yeah, I mean, in 6 and less than 7, but definitely in 6, like, Wizard was a pet class for somebody who was making the rules, because like you legit spent like 1 point, and you got the most lives in the game. You had the options for that. You had the most powerful spells list. Mostly Druid can compete in some degree, but not as like staying power wise. And then like your weapons were cheaper than everybody else's. It was abysmal as far as that balance goes. But again, like you said, there's those moments in the game where you have just these heroic moments, or at least these like triumphant type moments in the game that matter more, really. So I don't know, like it's something that I want to try and emulate in V8. But I'm having a harder time to get there.
Wow.
Yeah. And I am not one to be able to fix all that. So plug for all of the V9 surveys and whatnot that are going
absolutely.
out.
Please do.
Go
That's
take
what I was about
those
to say,
and let people who are smarter than me go and figure out how to make this better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that runs us right up on our time. We're going to roll the outro here in just a second. But do you have anything you want to plug, or anything cool you want to get in right here at the end, or anything I can put in the show notes?
Oh yeah, sure. If we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the Weavers Guild for LARPing. I love making belts. If you want to learn anything about it, feel free. Come on, join us there. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sir Godric, thank you so much for your time. We're going to go ahead and roll the outro. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.